I always thought that planning a wedding would be the most stressful part of getting married. The seating charts, the budgeting, the endless string of opinions, everyone tells you it's chaos. But what nobody warned me about was how quickly a wedding can become a battlefield. Not because of the logistics, because of family. My name is Elena. I'm 32, recently engaged, and until very recently, I had a decent relationship with my dad. Not warm, not close, but civil, respectful. I was the one who kept it that way. My parents divorced when I was 7. My dad, Victor, never took it well. He was petty in quiet ways. He'd accidentally schedule vacations when it was mom's turn to have me, or send me gifts that made it obvious how much more he spent than she ever could. He always needed to be the better parent, even if he wasn't the present one. Still, I played the peacekeeper. I remembered birthdays. I visited on Father's Day. I picked neutral restaurants and split checks even when he insisted on paying. I didn't need him to be the perfect dad. I just needed him not to make things harder. Then I got engaged. My fiancé, Caleb, is calm, funny, the kind of guy who makes a trip to Costco feel like an adventure. He proposed on a rainy morning while we were eating pancakes. No big gestures. No audience. Just love. We decided on a small wedding. Backyard. Springtime. 70 guests max. Nothing fancy, just simple and meaningful. And the one thing I wanted most? For my stepdad, Larry, to walk me down the aisle. Larry's been in my life since I was 10. He never tried to replace anyone, he just showed up. Recitals. Homework. Food poisoning. When I was 17 and crashed my car, it was him who showed up before the police even finished their report. Not because he was obligated. Because he cared. I knew my dad might not like it. But I wanted to be honest. So, when we sat down to talk wedding plans, I told him gently, I'd love for you to be part of the ceremony, maybe a toast or a reading. But I've asked Larry to walk me down the aisle. The silence was immediate. He blinked twice, then gave a tight smile. Interesting choice. I tried to stay calm. I wanted to let you know directly. No surprises. He nodded, sipping his coffee. Well, since we're talking details, I was thinking I'd help with the venue. Might as well make myself useful, right? I thanked him. It sounded generous, even thoughtful. But 2 days later, he texted me a list of his guest suggestions. 30 names, most of whom I barely knew. When I pushed back, politely, he responded, if I'm paying for the venue, I think it's fair I have some input. And then it hit me. It wasn't about being involved. It was about control. I told him, respectfully, that we were keeping things small. That if he wanted to contribute, we were grateful, but only if there were no strings. No ultimatums. No veto power over my day or my decisions. He didn't respond. Not that day. Not the next. Then, 3 days before Christmas, he left me a voicemail. It started with a pause. Then his voice, cold and clipped. Elena, Christmas is OFF. I'll be having my lawyer draft a refund request for what I paid toward the wedding. And don't expect another cent. Click. That was it. No, I love you. No, I'm hurt. Just legal threats in the tone of a man returning a defective blender. And he wasn't bluffing. A week later, I got a formal letter in the mail. From an actual lawyer. It demanded reimbursement for a $4,000 non-refundable venue deposit, which, according to the letter, my father had generously provided and now expected to be returned in full due to breach of verbal agreement. I sat on my couch, rereading it over and over. My hands weren't shaking. I wasn't crying. I just couldn't believe it had escalated like this. Caleb offered to handle it, but I told him not to. This was mine to deal with. Instead, I pulled up our old messages. Found the Venmo transfer for $1,000. Congrats to the bride-to-be ring party popper. Then I dug out the bank receipt. It was made out to me. Not the venue. Not a planner. Just a personal gift, labeled exactly that. When I showed it to our lawyer, she barely blinked. Not recoverable, she said. No contract. No venue receipt. This was a personal gift. He has no legal ground. I could have replied to the lawyer. Could have sent a snarky email. But I didn't. Instead, I did something else. I updated our guest list. I removed one name, Victor Moreno, and I added 3 more. Mrs. Hallman, my old piano teacher, who once let me cry in her classroom when my dad forgot to show up to a recital. Aunt Sylvia, Caleb's godmother, who offered to help make our wedding cake from scratch. And Jasmine, a backup singer from our caterer's jazz band, who asked if she could bring her girlfriend, just in case there's extra space. There was. When I submitted the final list to our planner, I stared at it for a long time. It felt clean, peaceful. For a week, I didn't hear a word. Then the post started. My cousin tagged me in a Facebook thread. My dad had posted one of those vague, "Some people will never appreciate the sacrifices parents make" rants. Someone commented, "Is everything okay with Elena?" He replied, "Kids today forget who raised them. After all I did, this is how she repays me." I didn't respond, but more comments came. Questions, gossip. A few judgmental relatives slid into my DMs, asking what happened. So I posted one thing, just a screenshot of his voicemail, with the transcription showing the exact words. "Christmas is off. I'll be having my lawyer draft a refund request." Caption, "This was after I said he couldn't veto who I marry. Merry Christmas, I guess." I didn't add anything else. No hashtags, no subtweets, just facts. And that's when things really started unraveling. The fallout hit like clockwork. Within 24 hours of my post, I had 3 voicemails, 5 Facebook messages, and at least a dozen texts. Not from my dad, from his orbit. The people who saw his version of the story first and assumed mine must be an exaggeration, or worse, some kind of smear campaign. My aunt called me crying. "Elena, I don't know what's happening, but your father says he's been cut out of your life. Are you okay?" My cousin, Maya, who barely speaks to him, messaged me. Holy hell, that voicemail. I always knew he was dramatic, but wow. And my mom? She just sent me a thumbs-up emoji and a photo of Larry building a fake arch for the wedding. I kept my replies short. The post wasn't meant to spark a debate. It was just a receipt. Proof. I thought, maybe, now that the truth was out, my dad would calm down. Maybe he'd realize how ugly he sounded and back off. I underestimated how much he hates being embarrassed. 3 days later, I got a second letter. Same lawyer. Different tone. This one wasn't about money. It was an offer. Or, more accurately, a veiled request. "Mr. Moreno would like the opportunity to speak with you in private and clear the air. He regrets the escalation and hopes to avoid further public conflict. Please let us know if you are willing to meet and under what conditions." I stared at it for a while. Not angry. Not even surprised. He didn't want reconciliation. He wanted damage control. Because that's how it always worked with him. He could twist a story until he looked generous, misunderstood, the bigger person. But that voicemail ruined his script. And I'd made sure the curtain stayed open. So I called our lawyer. Asked her to draft a reply. "The guest list is final. I'm not available for private meetings. But I'm happy to send a recording of the vows." That was it. No apology. No explanation. Just boundaries. The day after we sent it, I got another voicemail from him. Short. Petty. "Glad to know where I stand. You've made your choice." I deleted it without listening twice. And then silence. He didn't show up to the rehearsal dinner. Didn't send a card. Didn't RSVP. It should have felt sad. But it didn't. Because the weeks leading up to the wedding were, maybe for the first time, peaceful. Caleb's aunt taught me how to press eucalyptus into the table runners. My mom hemmed my dress by hand, while Larry measured planks for the aisle ramp we built in the backyard. The singer, Jasmine, ended up doing a little duet with my piano teacher during the cocktail hour. It was weird and perfect. We held the ceremony under a sky that couldn't decide if it wanted to be blue or gray. Larry stood beside me, holding my hand like he always did when I was nervous as a kid. When it was time to walk, he squeezed my fingers and whispered, "Let's do this, kiddo." And we did. The wedding went smoothly. No drama. No surprises. Just laughter, music, tears in the right places. I didn't check my phone once that day. Not when my bouquet got stuck in a tree. Not when someone accidentally played the wrong song during the first dance. Not when Jasmine's girlfriend proposed in the middle of the dessert line. It was only the next morning, when I was curled up in our little honeymoon cabin, that I finally looked at my notifications. Nothing from my dad. Until I scrolled to the very bottom. One last text. "Hope you're happy. You broke your father's heart." No greeting. No signature. Just guilt wrapped in punctuation. I stared at it for a long time. Not because I didn't know what to say, but because I knew I wouldn't say anything at all. I clicked the info button. Selected block number. Added him to spam. And that was it. No explosion. No last word. Just quiet. People talk a lot about closure. About forgiveness. About working through it for the sake of family. But sometimes the only peace you get is the one you choose for yourself. Christmas was off. But the silence? That was the real gift. The first Christmas without him felt strange, but not in the way I expected. There was no empty chair, no tense conversations, no awkward glances across the dinner table. Just warmth, candles, Caleb's terrible eggnog, my mom and Larry dancing in the kitchen to an old jazz record. The kind of soft, unremarkable happiness I used to think only existed in movies. Still, the absence lingered in small ways. My aunt sent a group text Christmas morning. Missing a few faces this year. Hope everyone's finding joy, even in the gaps. No one replied. A week later, another letter arrived. Not from my father this time. From his sister, my Aunt Nadine. She's the quiet one. Always stayed neutral through every family blow-up. But this letter wasn't neutral. She'd heard about the voicemail. She'd seen my post. And she had a different kind of story to tell. Apparently, my father had been planning a very different version of the wedding behind my back. He told her, months ago, that he was going to take care of everything. The venue, the band, even the dress. When she asked why he wasn't involving me, he said, she doesn't know what she wants. I'm saving her from herself. He had already spoken with a hotel, reserved a ballroom, was pressuring them to hold the date, even before I gave him a guest list. He even asked Nadine if she could talk some sense into me about not letting Larry walk me down the aisle. She didn't. And when I pushed back, when I said no, everything else unraveled. The voicemail wasn't a moment of anger. It was a mask slipping. I reread her letter 3 times, then folded it up and tucked it into my planner. For a while, I thought I'd just let it go. But something about that detail, that he was trying to plan an entire secret wedding without me, sat in my chest like a stone. So, I decided to post again. Not a rant, not a call-out, just a photo. A picture of me and Larry, taken right after we walked down the aisle. We're laughing. My veil stuck to his jacket. The sun is just behind us, making everything look like a memory already. I added a caption. The man who walked beside me every time I needed a hand. There was never a choice to make. That was all. No tag, no name, no dig at my father. But people understood. The comments came in waves. This is beautiful. Real dads show up. Period. Blood is biology. Loyalty is earned. I didn't respond to any of them. Just read them. Let them settle in. That night, Caleb and I sat on the floor of our new apartment, eating leftover wedding cake with forks straight out of the box. He asked me how I felt about everything. Honestly, I said, I don't feel anything right now. And that feels kind of amazing. But that was only mostly true. Because the truth is, some nights, I do feel something. Not sadness. Not guilt. Grief. Maybe. But not for the man who blocked me out of his life over a seating chart. For the idea I clung to for so long that maybe, someday, he'd stop seeing love as a scoreboard. That he'd stop needing to win. When I was 8, he took me to the zoo and let me ride on his shoulders. When I was 13, he taught me how to braid fishing line. There were good days. But the hard truth is, sometimes people who love you are still toxic. Still broken. Still incapable of loving in a way that doesn't feel like a trap. And loving someone like that back? It doesn't fix them. It just breaks you slower. Caleb asked me if I thought my dad would try to reach out again. I shrugged. If he does, I'll send him a gift. What kind of gift? I smiled. A copy of the vows. On vinyl. With no return address. We laughed. Not because it was funny, but because we were free. And that was enough. Spring turned to summer, and life filled in the cracks my father left behind. I didn't realize how much space his moods had taken up in my brain until they were gone. I started sleeping better. I took up pottery with Caleb on weekends, joined a local women's hiking group, even started volunteering at the community music school where Mrs. Hallman, yes, my old piano teacher, was still mentoring kids. One night after class, she asked if I wanted to play something. I sat down, ran my fingers over the old keys, and played the piece I'd rehearsed for my 8th grade recital, the one my dad missed because of a last-minute business trip. I didn't cry. I didn't feel bitter. I just played. Then I closed the lid and went home. It was a kind of healing I didn't expect. Quiet. Undramatic. But real. Then, in August, I got a notification on my phone. A tagged photo. I clicked, curious, and froze. It was a group picture. A retirement party, I think. In the background, standing next to a woman I didn't recognize, was my dad. His hair had gone gray since I last saw him. He looked thinner. Tired. His smile was the same, though tight, performative for the camera. The caption read, Celebrating Victor. 35 years of stubborn brilliance. I stared at it for a long time, not because I missed him, but because I realized for the first time I wasn't afraid of him anymore. Not his guilt trips, not his lawyers, not his sad attempts at public sympathy. None of it. I clicked hide post, moved on. A few days later, I got a letter. Real mail. No return address. But I knew the handwriting immediately. Inside was a card. One of those generic ones with a watercolor of a tree on the front and cursive inside that said something about wishing you peace in the choices you've made. No personal message. No apology. Just a note tucked into the bottom. Larry didn't raise you. I did. I was there first. I didn't show Caleb. I didn't even finish reading it. I just folded it once, placed it in a metal bowl, and burned it on the balcony with a lighter I found in our junk drawer. The ash scattered across our plants. And that was the last piece of him I let into my life. Because here's the truth no one tells you about boundaries. The people who hate them the most are the ones who benefited from you not having any. He didn't miss the wedding. He missed me. The version of me who apologized first, who made excuses for his moods, who bent over backwards to keep things civil so he wouldn't make them worse. That version? She's gone. I still get questions sometimes. At family events, from old coworkers, even from strangers online who find the original voicemail post, still circulating quietly in corners of the internet. Did you ever forgive him? Do you miss him? Would you let him back in? And the answers are always the same. No, not really, and not without a miracle. Because I didn't cut my father out of my life to punish him. I did it to protect myself. And I don't regret it for a second. He once told me Christmas was off, like it was some final punishment, some emotional death sentence. But he didn't understand. I don't need his approval. I don't need his drama. I don't even need his love. What I needed was peace. And now, I have it.